The views and opinions expressed on this podcast is not a direct reflection of the host and his guest's current or previous employers. The topics and hot takes discussed are meant to create conversations while offering a different perspective to current issues in the strength and conditioning industry. The opinions shared on this podcast are not meant to demean or offend anyone. However, as my grandfather used to say, a hit dog will holler. Thank you and enjoy the show. This podcast is sponsored by Simply Faster. Simply Faster is an educational resource and an open platform for coaches to share best practices and firsthand insights while providing peerless technology, equipment, and service.
Okay, cool.
Welcome everybody to the Croc Show. I am your host, Elton Cochran, aka Coach Croc. Today I have Missy Mitchell-McBeth, aka Triple M. She has spent time at TCU. She did 6 years at the high school level. She's currently working in the private sector as well as working on a book. And today, got a nice spicy topic for y'all, okay? Missy, I want to ask you, why are sport coaches so dumb?
One, that is an extremely spicy topic. So I don't really necessarily have an ironclad answer to that because I think that we would make our jobs as strength coaches much easier if we could get to the root of the problem. But I think one of the major issues is, sport coaches, everything's in the short term, right? Like everything surrounding wins and losses. Mm-hmm. So like where we as a strength coach look at, okay, I got 6 years to develop this kid into the athlete they need to be. Yeah. A sport coach is like, I got 6 minutes to win this game or I'm getting fired. And so everything they do is based around emotion, where everything we do is based upon like a 30,000 foot view of what goes on. Mm-hmm. So they're on Instagram and they're getting on there looking at all these, 7-second video clips and whatever, and they buy into that because again, that taps into that emotion, that feeds into that, how do I address this pain point? So they come to us with some dumbass, honestly dumbass shit that they saw on Instagram. Yep. And they think that needs to be immediately implemented in our program, or that's what they did when they were in high school and they felt that it was successful for them, so their N of one study becomes appropriate for everything in their path. So I think those are kind of a few reasons that they're dumb. I don't know if you want to add on to that or...
Yeah, and when we say dumb, we don't literally mean dumb. We mean like they don't understand my brain, right? It's acting dumb. Okay, and so, you don't know what you don't know, but there's a difference between seeking knowledge and understanding versus your own personal opinions about things that you don't know anything about. And then there's also this, like you said, like coaches are trying to win a game in that 6 minutes or whatever, whereas we're trying to program for the course of 6 weeks in their development so that way they're prepared to win that game. But there is this like misconception that anybody can do it when it comes to strength and conditioning, right? And there's a lot of coaches that are strength coaches. There are a lot of coaches that are strength and conditioning coaches. Just like there are sport coaches that are knowledgeable about their sport and maybe not so knowledgeable about strength and conditioning. And then there are some that are aware of the fact that they're not as knowledgeable about strength and conditioning. Therefore, they bring somebody in, like yourself, who is knowledgeable. And so I think that, we say dumb, right? And, as my grandfather says, the hit dog hollers. So if you are that coach that's like, why are they saying that I'm dumb? Then I'm sorry, like go to a clinic, go to a conference, go read a book, watch the Croc Show, like go and become informed. And I think that's the problem. And those are the coaches that we're talking about, are the ones that have this willful ignorance or this lack of appreciation for a strength coach who goes to a clinic, who goes on a podcast, who reads books. Like, you'd be better versed than I would, but there's probably not hundreds of books on volleyball, but there's hundreds of textbooks on strength and conditioning. So you can find your niche as a strength coach through information and knowledge and experience with other coaches, whereas as a sport coach, you kind of got to work with what you got. Like, it doesn't matter if I have beginning athletes or not, I can teach them a clean progression. I can teach a fifth grader clean progression. I can teach a high school athlete a clean progression. It can be taught. Whereas a sport coach is kind of like, this is my sports and these are my parameters and I can't really go outside of it, And so
I think you're kind of tapping into something that I wanted to say. Like you're saying, okay, we're not actually calling you guys dumb. Like
Yeah.
truly, we're not. And shameless self promotion here. I have a book coming out. It's called Developmental to Division One: Strength and Conditioning for the Volleyball Athlete. The target audience is a volleyball coach who is having to serve in the role of a strength and conditioning coach, right? So that coach is, if you're the high school level, you're coaching volleyball, you're coaching a second sport that you don't know about. So you got to learn soccer, you got to learn track, or whatever it is. Now you're driving a bus, you got 2 classroom preps. Oh, by the way, you got to go home and you got to be a mom or a dad or a dog mom or whatever, right? So you have all these things on your plate. And so the real reason that sport coaches are dumb about strength and conditioning is our fault. Like nobody is putting out clear and concise information to help serve, like to help plug that gap in the market. Because you and I know, like, I was a full-time high school strength coach. You were a full-time high school strength coach. That's the exception rather than the rule. If we had high school strength coaches everywhere, it'd be one thing, but the 99% is a sport coach having to do it. They have so much on their plate. Like, yes, there is some willful ignorance involved. Like, example was that awful video that came out that you and I commented. It was out of like a high school in San Antonio.
Unfortunately, it was in San Antonio.
You and I both commented and said, hey, the NHSSCA could be a great resource. Either one of us is willing to help. Strength Coach Network came in and said, we are more than happy to come down and do a coaches in service. They ghosted them. Right? So that's willful ignorance. But for the rest of them, it's like, it's information overload, right? They get on social media, they see something they like, they go try to implement that method in their program, but they don't understand the underlying principles. And because as a strength and conditioning industry, we're too busy in a pissing contest online about who's more right or whose program's better, because ultimately, like, we're insecure human beings, right? So in my mind's eye, like, the sport coaches need to do a better job of quote unquote educating themselves, but we need to be putting out information or we're either contributing to the problem by like creating information overload and arguing about really simple things, or we're helping solve it by putting out clear and concise info.
And I'm glad you referenced that video. To make a long story short, some high school boys look like football. Unfortunately, go figure, right?
It's always football.
It's 99% of the time it's football. They were, just to give you an idea, they were running in place while doing a clean and press in cleats on the football field, and you could tell that it looked like this is what we've always done, because there was no, they had a heavy bar, a semi-heavy bar, a lighter bar, an empty bar, but there was kids with that weight that struggled with it, and you could tell, like, hey, that kid's lifting too much, right? Let's just forget about the exercise. He's lifting too much. And I'm glad you referenced that video, because like you said, like, strength and conditioning, especially on social media, is so toxic. But it's like, okay, if a coach doesn't know what they don't know, what are you doing to help them? So like you said, me and you both reached out, Strength Network reached out, hey, we would like to help you guys do an in-service. Hey, DM me, I'd like to help. We were ghosted. And if we weren't mature people, we would probably be like, F those guys, I ain't helping nobody else. But in our profession, there's gonna be people that are sitting there begging you to help them or give them a nod of approval. And then there's gonna be people that are like, hey, Missy, you stay out of this, I know what I'm doing. And it's like, no, you don't, right? And so I think we as strength coaches, like you said, we are also at fault, because we have to take the time to educate those coaches, because you're at the high school level, the likelihood that you're gonna be at the same school 10 plus years with the same coaching staff is highly unlikely. Somebody's gonna move, somebody's gonna have a baby, somebody's gonna get a promotion. So it's like, in that time that you were at that school, you should be taking time to educate those coaches, especially the assistant coaches, because hopefully those assistant coaches want to become head coaches. And like we said, there's not a lot of full-time strength coaches at the high school level. I mean, we're talking about the video in San Antonio. I work in a district where we're the only district in San Antonio with 3 full-time strength coaches, and there's about 40, give or take, high schools in San Antonio, and only 3 of them have full-time strength coaches. So it's like, those other 37 high schools are basically trying to figure out things that they don't know. And so it's important for us to, reach out to those coaches when we feel like, hey, this person looks like they don't know what they're doing. Let me at least reach out, as opposed to the other route, which is, let me take this video, repost it, or quote it, look at this dumb shit here, and it's like, you're absolutely right, but that doesn't help that coach. And if we know anything about like, willful ignorance, when you start preventing facts and shoving information in people's face, it makes them double down on what they believe. So if you're telling me I'm an idiot and I don't know what I'm doing trash training, I'm probably gonna turn it up a notch. Where now we're gonna start doing like running in place, behind the head skull crushers or some crap like that. And it's like, we gotta be able to, we gotta be on point with our stuff, right? Because you can't go in there stuttering, unsure, I think, no, you gotta come in there on point. You gotta have a direct initiative to, hey coach, here's the problem that I see. Here's how I believe we can fix it. What do you want me to do? As opposed to like, hey, you're an idiot, you're wrong, this is stupid, you should do this instead. Because it's like, you're writing a book, somebody can come to you and say, hey, Missy, I think, based on my experience, maybe chapter 5 should go here and chapter 6 should go there. If you respect that person, or at least they come off in a respectful way, you're gonna be more willing to accept that versus like, hey, Missy, chapter 5, that's stupid. Like, it needs to be at the back. Because then you're gonna be like, okay, well, F you, I'm definitely keeping chapter 5 there now. So it's like, you kind of push people deeper into that willful ignorance when you try to tell them how stupid they are and how wrong they are, or at the very least, when you offer zero solutions or zero help. And so.
Yeah, and I think I want to tag in on that to say, just to be really clear, I don't think that there are very many coaches out there that have anything but the best interest of their athletes at heart. And so when we look at that coaching staff implementing that training method that we're referencing, at the end of the day, they're doing it because they believe that it's effective, or they believe that they've seen it be effective, or they believe that it's great for their kids.
Yeah.
And so what I don't want is this to be misconstrued as me and you like sitting here and just like talking noise about it, right? Exactly what you just said. That's just going to have them put their heels in the dirt more.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes people aren't ready to listen ever.
Yeah.
Sometimes people aren't ready to listen right now. So like from a sales and marketing perspective, you take 7 to 8 exposures before you purchase a product.
Mm-hmm.
So it may take 7 or 8 times of that coach seeing a different type of training to say, hey, maybe I should do this instead.
Yeah.
And that just kind of circles back to what I was talking about earlier with, instead of us getting in these fights, whatever, or pointing out problems, let's all like start trying to produce better content, show what we're doing in quality training sessions. Obviously my book is going to be a paid product, right? Okay, give me some money for this. But ultimately, like, it's a low cost, high value item to get in the hands of people that don't have access to filtering through the overwhelming amount of information online. So if we want to make our jobs easier as strength coaches, where sport coaches are concerned, the simplest way to do that is for us to, as much as we can, align on training topics and show more of a united front, instead of, these little, like I said earlier, pissing contests that happen between professionals in the field. And I'm as guilty of it as anybody else, but that makes our profession appear fractured. All right, and fractured professions don't garner a lot of respect, and I think that that's a big problem. So where the initial topic is like, why are sport coaches so dumb? We could easily flip this into like, why are strength coaches so dumb, and get like their feathers ruffled over sport coaches questioning it.
Yeah, and that's a great point. Is like, we as strength coaches, why would anybody want to listen and respect us if we don't even listen and respect other strength coaches? If I'm telling you, you suck and you're wrong and what you're doing is trash, why would a sport coach then look to you or even me and say, oh yeah, I'll be open to listening to you because this is your profession? And so like you said, we can almost title this, why are strength coaches so dumb? Because, we are toxic, and it's fueled by egos. It's fueled by, in my opinion, I feel like a lot of times you don't want to keep that energy with the sport coaches that are like shitting on you at your school. So you hop on the internet and get the Twitter fingers going. And it's like, hey, you were very critical of that coach's video, but it's like, I'm willing to bet there's some sport coaches that got things to say that you just kind of turn a blind eye to, And so I do think that, it's our job as strength coaches to educate those sport coaches, or at the very least, like I say, make ourselves available, right? Like, I have an open door policy in my weight room. If you see my door open, that means I'm available to talk. If it's closed, well, knock and hope that I get up and go get it because it's a nice lengthy walk, or, use your key, right? But nonetheless, I got to make myself available, because if a coach comes to me, right, and you're talking about, like your book about conditioning and everything, the coach comes to me seeking information about conditioning, and my response is like, how you not know how to condition your team? Like, Okay, coach, what is it that we're conditioning for? Let's sit down and break it down and go in depth so that way I can, teach a man to fish, right? And that way you can take that knowledge and information, you can apply it, come back to me and say, hey, Coach Prop, really great idea. It didn't work. What should I do instead? Or, hey, Coach Prop, it worked like a charm. Thank you for that. Now that coach has a positive impression about me, but more importantly, a positive impression about a strength coach. So that way, if they move on and they either don't have a strength coach or maybe they're in a school district that has somebody that coordinates strength and conditioning, they feel more comfortable and confident to go seek that coach, right, based on my experience. So I do think that, it's a 50-50, right? It's the sport coach's job to seek knowledge and information, but then it's also the strength coach's job to represent the profession in a way that somebody would feel invited. Because if strength coaches are constantly fighting, that means sport coaches is next, right? Like after we get done kicking each other's ass, like it's on to the sport coach, right? Or the athletic trainer. So it's like, if we as strength coaches want our sport coaches to be more knowledgeable, we got to make ourselves available. We got to have those conversations. And then when we see a coach that we perceive or believe is struggling, we got to offer help. Because let's say, for example, that coach, that ghosted us, there might be another coach that's tracking that same post that's like, oh my gosh, they're offering help. Like, oh my gosh, like Missy, oh yes, volleyball, oh perfect, Missy, hey, I saw you reached out to this coach for help. Forget him, hey, I need help. And being that you're the type of person that's like, if you want help and seek help, then you're gonna help them. And so, that video did its rounds. And, earlier today I was talking with another coach about, other organizations posting trash videos and just talking about like social media and how it's used and stuff. And like you said earlier, that plays into that, where if I'm on my phone and I'm scrolling through social media and I see a respectable coach posting trash training videos, I may not have the experience or the understanding to say like, hey, that's a bad lift or that's a bad rep. But just because that's a great coach doesn't mean that still can't be a bad rep or a bad lift or a bad demonstration. And so I think that's also important, is just separating the good training content from the bad training content, calling out the bad, but being respectful about it. Like, hey, this isn't a great video. However, this coach has great stuff. Yeah, it can get a little chippy, but it's like, if we're running out of a burning building and there's only one exit, I would hope that somebody's knowledgeable enough to be like, hey, don't go through that door, go through this door. So it's like, if somebody's posting bad training videos, it's not a bad thing to say, hey, this isn't bad, but here's a guy that does it even better that y'all should check out, right? And I feel like if you put it on social media, you open yourself up to criticism, to comments, you can turn your comments off and all that other stuff, but like, once you put it on the internet, you're open to all of that. And I think we got to accept that if I post a bad training video and you comment, hey, Coach Crop, not bad, but, Coach Walden down at Judson does a really great job. You should check him out, right? I got to check my ego at the door and be like, well, let me see what Coach Walden's doing before I like pop off and start acting crazy. But again, that's the strength and conditioning, toxic lifestyle that we have.
Yeah, and I think that, circling back on something previously, but also what you just said, like checking the ego with sport coaches, right? Like we want sport coaches to come to us to learn, but don't we need to turn around and do the same thing? So I'll give an example. So the other night we're doing Vertec approach touches with one of my 16s teams that they're not exactly the most compliant team with training and don't give the most effort. And the coaches over there are like, those touches are horrible. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. I'm like, here's 4 problems with their approach mechanics.
Yeah.
I'm like, hey, why don't we sit down together and you and I come up with some things that we can do that align with your verbiage that you're using on the court. And I'm not like a big sports specificity. General things are going to transfer at this training age. But if you can sell it to a coach, if you can sell it to an athlete, that's even better. So anyway, like I'm like, hey, let's come up with a few things. And she's like, yeah, cool, I'd love to sit down with you. So it's like, even if I never use a single thing that she tells me, or even if she comes to me and asks me for some things, like some ideas or whatever, and she doesn't use a single thing, we've at least shown to each other openness to learning from the other person and saying, hey, like, I'm here to help. Like, we're not against each other. Yeah. We're here for the same team, which is that athlete that's in front of us. And so I think the humility to go in and learn from other strength coaches if somebody calls you out, from the sport coach if they're saying, hey, you're not addressing the needs on the court. Okay, coach, what does that look like?
Yeah.
How do you think that's trained? Why do you want to do that? Because if you can start unpacking those questions, a lot of times some of the things you're already doing in training address those things. They just don't understand it, and you've just got to get to the bottom of what they want to communicate to them how your training program does that.
No, that's you. I couldn't have said it any better myself. No, and like I said, it's a hot take. We as strength coaches, we don't actually believe that all sport coaches are dumb. There's some dumb strength coaches out there. There's dumb people in every profession, right? And again, to acronym, don't understand my brain, right? I'm the strength coach. I understand how things work. You're a sport coach. You don't do strength conditioning. Your idea of conditioning and training is nowhere near my idea of strength and conditioning and training. That's why you don't understand my brain. So for anybody out there taking offense that, hey, I'm a sport coach, I'm not dumb, well, then we're not talking about you.
And Elton and I are more than willing to fight anyone any day.
And we'll argue all day, every day. But, Missy, I appreciate you coming by. One more time, what's the name of your book and when is it coming out? And when can I purchase my copy so you can sign it?
The name of the book is Developmental to Division I. It is available on either MissyMitchell-McBeth.com. You can download chapter 1 for free now and read it. It should be out in the next couple weeks as soon as the design phase is over, which is like formatting it to fit page graphics, all the things that nobody cares about but make the book look good.
Gotcha.
You can also get it at D2D1.com or just follow my socials, Missy M.McBeth, and it's got all the information. And you'll get your signed copy, the first one off the press.
Woo! That's what I'm talking about. Well, Missy, I appreciate you for coming on. As always, y'all like and subscribe. Thank you for tuning into The Croc Show.